In this video, we'll be installing the starter on this Ford F-150. So before we start this process, we're going to disconnect our negative terminal. It's going to be an 8mm. We're only going to remove this 8mm or loosen this up enough to get this terminal loose enough to spin. Once you get it to that point, you can just lift it right off and set it aside where it won't make contact with that terminal again. So now our starter here is held in by 2 bolts. There's going to be a ground cable attached to your bottom bolt, and the top bolt is going to be right around the side, up on the top. Both going to be 1/2-inch bolts. We'll start on the bottom. So on this bolt here, you have a washer. And now our top bolt, again, 1/2-inch. So the top bolt can be a little tricky to get to with the exhausts. So we put a swivel and an extension. Okay, so once we remove this top bolt, this is the last bolt holding our starter in. So you don't want to let go of the starter. We want to actually ease that starter down because we do still have a couple more things connected here, which we'll disconnect next. Now we have 2 bolts on our power connection. We have a power and a ground casing here, and another wire here. We'll remove these bolts. Now these bolts have actually rotted away for the most part, so the sizing might be different. We are actually using, I believe, a 9/16 on here to try and get these bolts free. Now ideally you do these while it's in the vehicle, but to show you, we've actually taken it down and made it a little bit easier. As now you have to hold your starter in place while you break these free. Alright, so this terminal here, which is our power lead, actually broke off while we were trying to loosen it. And our cable here, which is probably our exciter cable, actually broke from here as well, and the nut broke here, the bolt broke here. And the cable itself is actually pretty worn. So we're going to replace this section of cable. We're going to remove this from our cable here, and we'll reinstall it onto our new starter nice and clean. So the fact that these broke, it's probably a good thing. Okay, so now we're ready to install our new starter. What we're going to do first is actually install a couple of our cables here. Now you'll notice on your new starter that these terminals will come with new nuts and bolts, or basically just new nuts, but everything here is brand new and clean. So feel free to run through and clean up the ends of your terminals to make sure that they're nice and clean and making good contact as well. Alright, so the starter is going to go up like this. Just want to make sure our ground wire is in place and in the right direction. And our power wire, same thing. Alright, now you will have access once you put this up into the transmission. But if you want to, you can go ahead and tighten these down now. We're actually going to just put this up into position and then tighten them down after the fact. Alright, with our 2 bolts started on our starter, we can go ahead and tighten those up, and then we'll tighten up our power connections. Alright, we Get the bottom snugged up and we'll move up top. Alright, so we're actually going to take our ground cable and put it back here to where it was to begin with. Okay, now we're going to tighten down our positive lead from the battery up top. Now when you tighten this down, make sure that the connector on the wire itself isn't touching any metal and it's out away from grounding anywhere. And then just tighten that down. Again, same thing with this, just make sure it's not grounding out. The terminal's not touching anything metal. Tighten it down. And we'll come back and torque down our 2 bolts holding in our starter. So we're going to torque down our mounting bolts here on our starter. I'm going to torque them down to 18 foot-pounds. Alright, now that we've finished our process, we'll go ahead and reconnect our negative terminal. We're going to make sure that bottom lip there is all the way down. We're going to take our 8mm, tighten this down. We're only going to tighten it down enough to where the terminal actually doesn't spin. You don't want to over tighten it. Once you've got that, that's it.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.